Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of contract development and manufacturing organizations.
CDMOs.
Yeah, exactly. CDMOs.
Hi.
They're a major force in the pharmaceutical industry. And this report we've got, it really highlights how much they're growing and changing the game.
Yeah, they're way more than just manufacturers these days.
That's what I thought, too. It's pretty amazing. So just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, the average deal volume for CDMOs, it skyrocketed between 2017 and 2021, like a six-fold increase.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
It went from about 131 million US dollars per deal to a whopping 811 million. I mean, were you surprised by that?
To be honest, yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Um,
And I think it shows how the whole CDMO business model is transforming. They're becoming this one-stop shop for pharma companies.
Okay, so what does that actually look like in practice? Like, what kind of services are they offering now?
Well, before a pharmaceutical company might have just gone to a CDMO for straight-up manufacturing of a drug they'd already developed.
Right.
Now, CDMOs are getting involved way earlier. Like they're helping with research and development and formulation, even clinical trials.
So they're like partners throughout the whole drug life cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because of that, we're seeing all these different types of CDMOs popping up. The report calls them players at scale extenders and complementers.
Okay, those categories are helpful. I remember you had a good analogy for those, like different types of restaurants.
Yeah, so imagine the players at scale like those huge chain restaurants.
Yeah.
The ones with giant menus and tons of options.
Got it.
They're the big CDMOs with the resources to handle massive projects across a bunch of therapeutic areas.
Like the industry heavyweights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you've got your extenders. They're more like that family-run restaurant that's like, hey, let's add a new specialty to our menu.
Okay.
So they're typically mid-sized CDMOs. They've got their core expertise, but they're branching out, expanding what they can do.
Building on their strengths.
Right. And then there are complementers. Now, these guys are like those niche restaurants that focus on perfecting one very specific dish. They're highly specialized CDMOs with deep expertise in a particular technology or therapeutic area. Like they might be the masters of cell and gene therapy.
Oh, yeah. Cell and gene therapies. You hear so much about those these days. They seem like the future of medicine.
They really do hold a lot of promise for treating diseases that were once considered incurable. But they're incredibly complex to develop and manufacture.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So is that where CDMOs come in?
Absolutely. A lot of pharma companies just don't have the in-house capabilities to handle these novel modalities. So they turn to CDMOs who've invested in the tech and expertise.
It's like they're filling this crucial gap.
Yeah, and the numbers show it too. The report says that deals involving novel modalities went from 29% in 2017 to 40% in 2021.
Wow, that's a big jump. So it's safe to say we're seeing a shift towards these more complex and potentially revolutionary therapies. But if the science is so complicated, does that mean only the big players at scale can handle it?
Not necessarily. While the big players are definitely involved, we're also seeing those specialized complementers really shining in this space. They're the ones pushing the boundaries and driving innovation in these cutting-edge fields.
So even smaller, more niche CDMOs can make a big impact on developing these potentially life-changing treatments.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about this industry right now.
It's amazing how these smaller CDMOs are making such a difference in bringing these new therapies to life. It really changes how we think about the traditional big pharma company doing everything themselves.
Yeah, and this shift is impacting the financial side of things too. This report mentions that investment firms are getting more and more involved in CDMO mergers and acquisitions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which shows that there's a lot of confidence in the future of this sector.
So it's not just the science that's evolving, but the whole business world around these therapies is changing too.
Exactly. And that raises some important questions about, how this might affect the development and accessibility of these treatments.
That's a good point. We can't just focus on the scientific breakthroughs. We need to think about the real-world implications too.
Right. Like we've been talking about cell and gene therapies and how they could be game changers for so many diseases,
Yeah.
but they're also really expensive to develop and manufacture. So as CDMOs become more integrated into the process, will they help make these therapies more affordable, or could they actually make things even pricier?
That's a big question. The promise of these therapies is huge, but it won't matter much if only a few people can afford them.
Exactly. And this ties into the bigger issue of global health equity. If CDMOs are mainly focused on serving high-income countries, it could make existing health disparities even worse.
So while the rise of CDMOs could make manufacturing more efficient and maybe even lower costs, there's also this risk that it could widen the gap between those who can access these new treatments and those who can't.
right? It's a real concern.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for, smart policies and partnerships to ensure these advancements benefit everyone no matter where they live. It can't just be about scientific progress.
Right.
It has to be about equitable access too.
Absolutely. I agree. And that makes me wonder about the role of governments and regulatory bodies in all this. As these therapies become more complex and CDMOs play a bigger part in their development, how do we make sure they're safe and effective while also encouraging innovation?
It's a tough balance,
Okay.
for sure. And I think we'll see a lot of changes in regulations as these novel therapies become more common. Regulators are already trying to figure out how to oversee these new technologies, and the growing involvement of CDMOs adds another layer of complexity.
It sounds like there are a lot of moving parts and potential challenges as this industry keeps evolving.
There are, but there are also incredible opportunities. Like we talked about how some CDMOs are expanding into clinical trial services.
Right.
So they're going beyond just making the drug to actually helping test it and get it to patients. But this report suggests they could go even further, maybe even into areas like personalized medicine.
Personalized medicine, that's where treatments are tailored to an individual's genetic makeup, right? I've heard about it, but it always seemed kind of futuristic to me.
It might sound like sci-fi, but it's becoming reality. And CDMOs could be crucial in making it happen. Imagine a future where they're not just mass-producing drugs, but creating highly specialized, individualized therapies.
Wow. So instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, you'd have treatment specifically designed for each patient's needs. That's incredible. How
Yeah.
far off are we from that being the norm?
It's hard to say for sure, but the speed of innovation in this field is amazing. And with CDMOs investing more and more in the technology and expertise needed for personalized medicine, I think we'll see major progress in the next few years.
It feels like we're at a turning point in medicine. We're on the verge of some really transformative changes in how we treat diseases.
I agree. And as we navigate this new landscape, it's more important than ever to have open discussions about the potential benefits and challenges,
Wow.
to make sure we're creating a future of healthcare that benefits everyone.
Well said. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to how complex and how much potential the CDMO world has. They're not just working behind the scenes anymore. They're shaping the future of medicine in ways we're just beginning to understand.
Exactly. And as these organizations continue to change, I think we can expect even more surprising developments in the years to come.
Yeah, it really is amazing to see how much things are changing in medicine. And CDMOs are playing a huge role in all of it.
They really are.
Yeah.
And it's not just happening in one country or another. It's global.
Right. We talked about how investment is flowing across borders, especially from Europe, the Middle East, and Africa into North America. But is it just about the money, or are there deeper connections being made?
It's definitely more than just money. We're seeing more and more partnerships and collaborations between CDMOs in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about it. A company in Europe might be really good at one specific technology, and a company in the US might have the manufacturing power.
Right.
So they work together and can bring new therapies to market faster and more efficiently.
So it's like this global network of innovation.
Mm.
Each player brings their own strengths to the table. That sounds really cool, but I bet it also comes with some challenges.
Oh, for sure. When you've got companies from different countries working together on these cutting-edge therapies, things can get complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you make sure everyone's intellectual property rights are protected in different countries? How do you ensure that everyone meets the regulatory standards in different places?
Yeah, that's a lot to figure out.
Yeah, it's something the industry and governments are still working on.
It's pretty mind-blowing to think about how pharmaceuticals aren't just limited by national borders anymore.
It's truly a global thing. And this brings us back to that idea of global health equity we were talking about before. With all this interconnectedness, what's going to happen to people in low and middle income countries? Will they have access to these new therapies?
Yeah, because it's one thing to develop amazing new treatments, but it's a whole other thing to make sure everyone who needs them can actually get them.
Exactly. It's a complex issue. On one hand, the growth of CDMOs could lead to more efficient manufacturing, which could lower costs and potentially make therapies more affordable, even for people in countries with limited healthcare resources.
That would be amazing if these breakthroughs could reach everyone, not just those in wealthier countries. But is that realistic?
It's a good goal to work towards. But there are also potential downsides. Like, if CDMOs focus mostly on high-income countries where they can make more money, it could make those existing health disparities even worse. We need to be careful about that and find ways to encourage the development and distribution of these therapies so that everyone benefits.
It seems like everyone needs to work together. Governments, pharmaceutical companies, the CDMOs themselves, and even international organizations to make that happen.
Yeah, I agree. It's not just about the science. It's about creating a more equitable global health system.
Mm.
That takes collaboration and a commitment to making sure everyone has a chance to benefit from these medical advancements no matter where they live.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. We started by talking about the basics of what CDMOs do, and now we're talking about these big ethical and global implications.
It's been quite a journey. The main takeaway, I think, is that this is an industry that's constantly changing. The future of healthcare is being shaped right now, and CDMOs are at the center of it all.
Well, to our listener, we encourage you to keep learning and asking questions. The world of CDMOs and the impact they have on our lives is only going to get more fascinating and important. Stay curious and join the conversation about the future of medicine. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.